Welcome to another episode of Tangled Rights. I am Justin W. Wilson, Esquire. Beside me is Shane D. Cox, Esquire. We're both lawyers. But something that I always forget to say that I'm going to say today, nothing that we say on here, unless specifically stated otherwise, is legal advice. Obviously, always consult your attorney in your jurisdiction. If you have any specific questions, if you're in the state of Nevada or Kansas, I can answer them. Shane, you can only answer questions in Nevada, right?
Nevada. Sorry, I'm only licensed in Nevada. Never wanted to take another bar exam.
I took the uniform bar exam.
Bar exam sucks.
It did suck. I passed it twice on the first try. No big deal. And I scored high enough on the UBE to waive into any UBE jurisdiction in the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who knows what that means? Ube.
Me?
That's like purple yams,
Uniform bar exam. It is a bar exam that makes way more sense than the other ones. And what that is it allows people to get basically qualified to be an attorney, which is all that law school and the bar exam do. They say you're competent, right? Which is the bare minimum. And then you can waive into different states. But each state will have its own requirements. For example, New York requires their own state-specific sub-bar exam that's 50 questions, multiple choice, open book. Not exactly a high bar to clear. But either way, don't take the bar. It sucks. Don't become a lawyer. Do something else.
Nevada is one of the hardest bar exams, too.
Supposedly, it's either number 2 or number 3.
Yeah, it's top 5, so it's its own, and it's 3 days. Most are 2 days, but Nevada's was 3 days.
Yeah. You know my favorite part about the bar exam?
Going to sleep after?
No. The second day of the bar exam, you get out, you turn your phone back on and all that stuff. I had gotten a call from an investigator at the DA's office saying, hey, we need to answer some questions about your background because the DUI that I had.
Because you had a pending job with the DA, right?
I'd already thought I had a contract, which is why I moved here from New York. And then this fool calls me the second day of the bar exam and he starts talking to me about stuff and I'm frazzled, because my brain's not working. And I'm like, bro, I've already gotten a job. I've got the letter. And he's like, oh, well, it's a conditional offer. We still need to follow up on this. Can you come in tomorrow? And I'm like, no, dude, I'm finishing the bar exam. And he's like, oh, well, just forget about this and let's talk on Monday. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I moved to another state and I might not have a job. I'm just going to forget about it.
The bar exam is scheduled the same time every year. Everywhere, because there are some overlapping elements and they don't want people talking about it.
Correct. It's not a secret.
In other states. So it is always the last week of July and the last week of February. So he shouldn't have been surprised by that.
No, he shouldn't have.
He's not thinking about it, though.
He wasn't thinking about that. He was just thinking about making sure that, somebody who blew a .09 10 years before wasn't some kind of raging alcoholic.
Were you?
No.
Okay.
I went to a birthday party. I had 5 beers, I think. And I waited a little while, thought I was sober, and drove home. And I wasn't.
Nope, you popped.
Which is why always Uber. But they didn't have Uber in Southeast Kansas in 2007.
Everywhere now, though.
Not Southeast Kansas. But
have you tried out there?
No.
I would check.
There's only 3,300 people in the whole county. I guarantee you. What do you want to bet? Bet you $100.
All right. Let's talk about other stuff.
Anyway,
I've got one that's new. We want to thank Adam Clausen for being on. It's been a while since it's been just me and Justin. So Adam Clausen's story was insane.
Nuts.
We enjoyed it. Legal nerds here. We like the change of laws, Congress changing stuff up, brand new motion for compassionate release that was super interesting.
And just his positivity. Like, I could see how it'd be really easy to be pissed.
Yeah.
And he did it, and he admits that and all that. But the way that the laws were set up, you can tell that the purpose was not to do to him what was done to him. It was to get the people who are recidivists, hey, you did a robbery, you paid your debt, you got back out, and you won't stop robbing. So we got this stick here of 25 years if you use a gun when you rob. That's not what it was for. It's just ridiculous.
Not the law anymore. So
yeah.
I guess we can't complain now. Maybe.
I'm still going to complain.
We'll leave that for another day.
Sure. All right, let's go. What do you got?
Anyway, we have a real crime that is a horrible crime. There's this girl by the name of Sarah Boone. It's in a city just outside of Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
So her and her boyfriend are about 42 years old at the time. They've been together for a bit. We've seen this. There's a history of charges for domestic battery, domestic violence between them. He has multiple. She has one charge. He's got a domestic battery by strangulation, which means
That he
Putting
put
the
his hands around her neck and impeded the blood flow or the oxygen flow.
Okay. All right. Which here in Nevada, that makes it a felony. It goes up way more serious.
I think a category B, if memory serves.
Category B, which is the second highest, there's A, then B. So choking your domestic partner, very serious. But anyway, there's a history between them. And you might have heard of this story, Justin.
Okay.
One day, Sarah calls the police and says, my boyfriend's dead.
That's not good.
He has suffocated.
It's a C. Sorry, I looked it up. It's a C in Nevada.
All right, let me go back.
He's suffocated.
He's suffocated, okay?
Okay.
Police come and investigate. She says this crazy story about how they were playing hide and seek, and he hid himself or thought it was a joke for him to be in a suitcase.
Okay.
Okay. He's in that suitcase for hours. Hours. She leaves, goes and parties, comes back. He's dead. Lost oxygen. It was zipped up. He died. He expired.
Jesus Christ.
All right. You ready for the fun legal part? There's a lot of legal fun stuff going on. There was something very recent, but we'll go to the beginning.
It's always a good place to start.
The police ask, this is February 2020, right before COVID. So not even, hey, we're trapped in the house together excuse. That's why we hate each other. And this is before COVID. Not that that's
we just hate each other organically.
yeah, obviously they have a string of beating each other up. If you're in a relationship like that, get
help.
out.
Get help, first off. There's plenty
Get
of
help.
hotlines, but yes, Shane's right.
Get out.
Just don't. If you're in a relationship where you need to hit each other, perhaps you shouldn't be with that person.
And there were no kids in this situation.
That's
so get out. Change. Something needs to change. Work on yourself. Whatever. Okay. So the police obviously think this is weird, right?
Yeah.
So they call Sarah and say, hey, will you come in for questioning? What's rule number 1 in that, Justin?
Nope.
Okay.
Am I being ordered to come in?
Nope.
Well,
She wasn't.
Guess what? That's it's a trick question.
They always try voluntarily first, or
Because-
usually try voluntarily
Yes,
first.
they usually try. But if I'm being ordered, you wouldn't be calling me. You'd be snatching me from my job. So
Yep.
if they call and ask, don't talk to them. The answer's no. Even if you didn't suffocate your boyfriend.
That's a good way to get people to talk, make them feel we're just investigating. We're just looking into
Clearing
it.
some things up,
All right.
AKA building our case against you.
It gets worse. You ready for this?
It gets worse.
It gets worse for her.
It seems like it's already pretty bad.
Yes, she brings her phone with her to the police station, and they say, "You don't mind, if we look at your phone, right? Just to check some things out."
Okay.
And so everybody, I'm so innocent. I did nothing wrong. This was just a misunderstanding. Go ahead, look at my phone. Guess what's on the phone?
Evidence.
Big time evidence. There is a video on there of her boyfriend pleading for his life, screaming, and she's laughing, and she says, "This is what you deserve."
I'm going to say probably not.
How's that for evidence?
It's good evidence. So
For the prosecution, right?
yes, very bad for the defense. I'm assuming there'd be a time stamp on it and a date stamp that showed that it was the right time and date for this incident. So I'm going to skip all of those things that I would attack or want to look at to see maybe, it's a super prior video. We can motion it out because it's unrelated to this exact incident. But assuming that that's not the thing, the problems that you run into there is it's a voluntary, she voluntarily showed up. She was probably Mirandized anyway, I would guess. Then she voluntarily handed them the phone. It's going to be real difficult to get that excluded, if not impossible, from what you're telling me. And in a murder case where the dude suffocates and him saying, "Hey, please let me out," that's pretty damning.
The quote is, "For everything you've done to me."
I'm sure she thought that. And well, here's the other thing. Maybe this is the only argument that I think you could make, and I don't know if it's great. You could argue that she wasn't trying to kill him. She was just trying to screw with him, to punish him a little bit. Hey, I'm going to make you sit in there for a moment and think about what you've done. It's like timeout for adults inside of a suitcase, if you will.
We talked about mens rea and intent before
Sure.
too. So.
And if the intent truly was, or that's what the argument would be. All they're going to do in that trial, and I don't know anything about this case.
I'll tell you more. There's
would be
more
that
coming.
They're trying to mitigate. That's it. At least for now. So tell me more stuff that's going to make my position change.
Oh my goodness. This has been going on obviously since 2020 when she
Still going on?
still going on.
What?
She has burned through 8 attorneys. 8 attorneys, and very recently burned through her last attorney, wherein the judge gave a long order saying that she has now waived her right to counsel because of going through so many attorneys.
I don't think you can do that.
You can do that.
I mean, you can waive your right to counsel, but I don't think that burning through attorneys is
That's not the reason. She, throughout the whole entire process, she has been, all of her attorneys, when they're withdrawing, when you withdraw, you usually have to file a motion with the court.
Have to have a good reason.
So
Especially if it's further along and the case is closer to trial.
they are ready for trial. Like this case should have gone to trial a while ago.
So then the bar to clear on that is very high. You
So-
don't get off of that without some real good reasons.
So there's been motions to withdraw every time. Maybe they're telling how difficult she is to work with. She wants to present her own case too, and she's been submitting letters to the judge that are pages
Crazy.
long, just kind of insane things. So
Wait a minute. You mean somebody who would suffocate someone in a suitcase is crazy?
yes,
Come on, of course she is, man.
there's some elements there. So this was very recent that she is ordered now to represent herself in court. So there's a trial coming in October 2024. She's been, I mean, she could have been studying the law while she's been in prison, and she might
Jail.
be educated enough now to present a defense, right?
I'm sure that she has been studying on some stuff, but the thing is, in my experience with these pro se litigants who want to do their own trials that are difficult, obstreperous, whatever, they can't get out of the weeds, right? They get so focused in these minute details that literally don't matter, and they end up arguing, and they sound silly.
To us.
To everybody. Lay people that don't really know why it sounds cringy are like, ugh, brother, ugh. Brother, ugh, you know? So all I can say is get your popcorn. It's going to be entertaining. If you ever watched Maury Povich or Jerry Springer as a child, if you were white trash, it's going to be a lot of fun. I can promise you.
This starts October 2024. And I haven't seen whether there is standby counsel for this.
There has to be. If they don't, then it'll get appealed and it'll get overturned and they'll have to retry it.
She's waived her right to counsel. So this is so incredibly rare.
I have never seen them not put standby counsel on.
Yeah. No,
Even for minor things.
I would guess. I don't know what's going on in Florida.
Is it capital? Is this particular case capital?
I would guess so, but I'm not certain if they're seeking death penalty.
I mean,
or
the
not.
facts of this one sound pretty egregious. If you're telling me that homie
She was charged with second degree, so it shouldn't be capital. But
so they've already hedged their bets and they're not going for that because they don't know if they'll be able to prove that she meant to kill him, that she
Yeah.
was just trying to like screw with him, like I said.
pre-existing intent, which is,
And the difference between second degree and first degree is second degree is an intentional killing, but it's not an intentional killing with the purpose of killing. It's an intentional killing in that I did an intentional act, but my intentional act wasn't designed to kill. Like if I take this gavel and I huck it at Austin and my intent is to hit him with it, which is a battery, but it just so happens it hits him, right in the off switch and he goes night-night forever. I wouldn't be guilty of first degree murder, and I don't even think I'd be able to be charged with first degree murder. It would only be second because I didn't have the malice of forethought to say, hey, when I throw this, I'm not doing it just to be a jerk. I'm doing it to kill him. So that's the difference here.
let's talk about, we glossed over what standby counsel is. Can you tell us what standby counsel is, Justin?
Standby counsel is exactly what it sounds like. You have an attorney that's on deck that's sitting there throughout the whole trial. The trials that I've seen where there's standby counsel and the ones on TV, that you watch videos of, there'll be an attorney that's sitting there just watching, waiting. They bounce things off of the pro se litigant, but also they're there in case things get completely out of hand so they can step right in. and take over.
And where do they sit typically during the trial, or does it depend?
I would say it's going to depend for sure, but in the times that I've seen it, they're literally at counsel table. They're right next to him. The one that I talked about with the dude that shot the dog that got under the desk, his standby counsel was right next to him.
And that has been the case in some cases where a pro se criminal defendant could argue, hey, I don't want him sitting at my table because then the jury thinks that I have his or her assistance and that I'm choosing to speak on myself. So, and this is kind of the getting into the weeds. And last week we were in a kind of a similar but distinct situation where there's a dangerous criminal defendant that the judge, jury, victim has fear of. So they're going to put some plainclothes officers inside the trial.
Yep.
And so the jury doesn't know.
5 of them, I think.
Was that how many it was?
It was either 5 or 6, and there were going to be some in the stands where the witnesses are, like the people just watching the trial. There's going to be one kind of in front of the bar next to him. He was going to be in plain clothes, but they basically were going to make sure that there was no presence. The idea being, it's the same as whenever somebody goes to trial and they're not wearing an orange jumpsuit. You don't want that bias of someone saying, oh, he's got chains on, he's guilty. So a lot of people that you'll see in trial, they are in custody, but they get a suit. Either the family provides it or the state they have like a locker that they're like, hey, here's all the trial clothes we have for people.
Are you medium large or XL double X?
Yeah,
Here,
42,
put this on.
42 regular, perfect. Here you go, bud.
That's the only size we have.
Yeah, it looks like a 10. But yeah, so that's the way that they do it to try to eliminate that bias and eliminate basically, everybody's heard that. Well, he's in orange. He did it.
Yeah. Perception is everything, though.
Yeah,
so
it's huge.
There are some constitutional rights for everything to look like normal. So they don't want a jury to think, wow, there's this many officers here. This guy's dangerous. Like,
Yep,
this
he
is
definitely
an important case. Like, they're scared he's going to attack the judge.
Mm-hmm.
This very awesome judge who we love. It was very nice.
Big fan of her.
we're big fans. And
her law clerk.
Yeah, okay. I don't know who her law clerk is now, but
I
friend of yours?
forget his name, but he is a gangster. That kid. Whenever.
No, we were in Blues.
Bluth. Oh,
We were in Blues that day.
Let's undo that part. Austin, chop that out.
Not a.
I thought we were talking about the other one. Yeah.
What's his face?
All right, ready?
Lasso's kid. Yeah.
Go.
What was I saying?
I don't know.
But we really do like that judge, and she is doing her best. There's so many non-law legal things that you have to worry about in a trial. I mean, I've talked to potential jurors who said, "Oh, he was smiling. He didn't look sorry for this crime, being on a potential jury pool, and so he's guilty."
But then
you didn't hear any of the evidence, and you've decided he's guilty.
But then you're going to have the exact opposite. Somebody's going to be up there, and they're going to look at that guy, and they'll see him, and let's say he looks morose. He's just sitting there, just Mr. Poopy Pants, and they're going to be like, "Look how scared he is. He did it. He's definitely guilty. Look how he's sorry. He regrets it. He's scared we're going to send him to prison." There's no good answer.
Juries are like Vegas. Just roll the dice, and
see what happens.
It's tough. And so there's methods in place to like the plainclothes officer or even the counsel sitting there. That could be something that a jury could look at and be like, well, he didn't talk the whole time, but he was sitting there. So
he was really doing it all.
That must mean he's guilty or whatever. So
I could see the utility in having counsel be away from you because there is a tactical reason why you want a defendant to do it themselves. Not a great idea, but they're definitely going to get something from the jury. I don't know what it's going to be. But if you have a jury who's expecting lawyers, expecting polished, refined arguments, and they get Private Joe Smuckatelli up there just doing what he wants to do, saying things like a regular person.
Opening statements and closing arguments are so fun. Questioning's fun.
They're so funny. If you guys want to see something funny, just Google pro se closing statement. It's brilliant. You'll laugh and laugh.
They aren't polished.
And then cry.
So yeah, it's crazy because people think, hey, legal, there's motions that you're filing. But once you're in trial, man, this is just lay people stuff. This is just like,
It's acting. It's theater.
This is thrown in the octagon and, seeing what happens.
Sure.
It gets crazy in there. There's a lot of
Lady
legal
punches like
stuff.
that. What do you think?
I don't know.
Have you ever punched anybody?
No, of course not.
Not even like your brother or anything?
No, of course not. Probably in the arm, not in the face.
You never punched anybody in the face?
Let's talk about Sarah Boone.
Okay. Sarah. She's
One
in trouble.
One last thing. So there's some evidence, things that could come in and could not. Prior bad acts, the fact that she may have battered him before and there's a charge. Does that come in? Why or why not, Justin?
So most prior bad acts are not going to come in because the idea is it's not conclusive of what you're talking about. There are very specific situations where you can get them in. Now, what is it? It's mimic, motive, intent.
Modus operandi.
Motive is modus operandi.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have all the evidentiary rules memorized. I'd have to look this up. But I just know that you can't get things in to prove something else. Apples are not oranges.
Mistake, identity, common scheme or plan.
That's
Motive, intent, mistake, identity, common scheme.
Then that's not for bringing in prior bad acts. That's something else.
Prior bad acts is its own thing, I think.
Yeah. All right, whatever. I don't know. Law school stuff. But yeah, I would assume that the prior bad acts are not going to come in on this one.
Well, let me give you one more thing. She's expected to maybe present a battered women syndrome defense.
Then it has to come in.
So that is the exception. So if she's bringing a defense, she has to be able to she wants to bring in evidence that she's been beaten by him so much that her mental state is absolutely changed. And this is she's trying to just use self-defense to stop him from beating her.
I was right. Sorry.
You're always right.
No, I was looking it up. Prohibited uses. Evidence of any crime, wrong, or act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that on a particular person or a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character. However, it may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. It is mimic.
It is all part of
Hooray.
what the case is.
Sometimes
So
I'm right.
she's expected to bring this defense.
That's
that
what I was just
she's
going to say.
been-
She can open the door.
She could open the door, and then she had one instance against her, which maybe she could easily explain and say, he's beaten me so many times.
Right.
This one time, I fought back, and I got charged.
Sure.
So
Because I preemptively struck, punched him in the face before he did anything to me, before he threatened me.
this one time, and I took the rap for it. I, told the cops it was me because I didn't want him to beat me later.
There were, I think there was a battered woman case recently where she shot the guy, and it was a big deal. It happens a lot. That's the thing.
It is a defense that an attorney who has studied in the law and criminal defense.
You also need a psychologist because that whole thing, it's a psychological diagnosis or that has a psychological component to where you're going to need an expert to explain, hey, this person was so terrorized and abused that they thought the only thing they could do to defend themselves was to kill somebody. In this case, I think even if you get that in, you're going to have some difficulty with it based on what you've seen in that video. You deserve this.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tough one.
That's gonna be an insane trial scheduled now for October, and I would guess that judge is probably firm on the date now.
Yeah.
Because it's been booted back so many times. Usually when the new attorney comes on, they come and beg the judge and say, can we get more time? Like,
Yep.
there's so many things an attorney knows about a case that are not in the documents because they have conversations with the defendant, and sometimes they don't want to write everything down to make a paper trail of that, and definitely not going to pass that to a new attorney. So
Sure.
it takes time to get on a new case
And you have
get
to
ready
get your
for
head
trial.
around it.
You
need
on
to
a murder,
know,
especially.
A murder, yeah. You need to know the evidence backwards and forwards.
So this is run through 8 attorneys. It's run for over 4 years. I'm sure the judge is ready to get this one up to trial and get it going, but it's going to be a multi-week trial, and it'll be
fun to watch in on. Another one that would be really interesting was voir dire with a...
oh.
Brother.
Ugh. Okay, so voir dire is the selection of the jury. You have a pool of jury members, and we've touched on this before. Sometimes certain people are not ready to be juror members. They have biases one way or the other. Maybe you have a potential juror who's been beaten by a boyfriend, husband for years. So the prosecution's going to say, well, that's not fair. They're going to relate to her. There could be any number of reasons. There's going to be people with preconceived notions because this has been on the news everywhere. I've heard of this, and then people in the Orlando area undoubtedly have heard of this. So it's going to be hard to find an impartial jury, and the defense gets to participate and ask questions of the jury veneer and see what they think. So that's the first step is picking a jury to see who can be here for these 3, 4, 5 weeks. We don't know how long it's going to be, what the plan is.
I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a long trial, but I'll bet it's not going to be as long as it would be.
There's not too many witnesses, I would guess, but I don't know.
Actually, that's wild. You could do that trial in probably a week.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, you need a medical expert.
She doesn't know
and
what she's
responding
doing.
police.
She doesn't know what she's doing, right? So
Sure.
is she going to call witnesses? What
Is she going to cross-examine?
is she going to cross? Is she going to testify? Is she going to waive her fifth?
She's going to have to.
I think she
And
has
that's the
to.
other interesting thing. This is the really weird one. And this one I've always thought is strange. When you have somebody who constitutionally is allowed to testify in their own defense, but they don't have counsel, they basically just get up
and they tell a story.
and they give a narrative, and then they get crossed on it.
Yeah. And you can't just tell your story and then say, okay, now I plead the fifth.
Nope.
You get to get cross-examined. And
My turn.
prosecutors...
You can't handle the truth.
Prosecutors are good at cross-examining.
That was the
sometimes.
defendant, not the prosecutor in that case.
Sometimes the prosecutors have cross-examined thousands of people, so they're going to be ready to come for you.
Hundreds of times.
So they got probably top murder team, whoever they think is their top prosecutor.
Is it? It's you said it was outside of Orlando. Is it possible that it's some podunk town, or is it like a proper town?
I think it's a suburb of Orlando.
But even then, sometimes you can get in. You can get an attorney.
It might be Orlando County. I don't know.
Okay.
You know, we don't know how Florida operates, but you could.
I know that there's some counties in Kansas where they'll have the AG coming in,
Yeah.
to prosecute them when it's like a complicated SA case or a murder case that they'll do that, or when they're conflicted because, you know, they've got some issues where it's such a small area, right? And let's say the prosecutor knows the victim or something like that, like is a close family friend of them, then you'll have situations where they get conflicted out.
This will be a fun one to keep watching, but
For sure.
you can waive your rights. You can waive certain rights. Fourth Amendment, we've talked about a lot, by a cop saying, can I search your car? Yes. You've waived your Fourth Amendment right against a
With
warranted search.
The exception of small exclusions. Yes.
Right. It is, you can waive your Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination. To waive your right for representation by an attorney, that's hard to do. And
Even when people ask for it, they get told no.
and this is according to this judge. She gave I think it was a 42-page decision, a long decision, because she wants to protect herself
Yeah, she
from
wants
getting
to
overturned.
Protect
This
the
will
record.
undoubtedly, this part of it will undoubtedly be something that gets appealed, you know, to Florida Supreme Court and then potentially to the U.S. Supreme Court, because it has to deal with right to counsel, which
Sure.
is a constitutional protection. So this could be something we see come back, but then she'd have a right to another trial, basically, if
And then the
her
state
rights
gets to
been
decide
violated.
if they want to try it after that.
I would guess they would, but
Probably.
so
So that actually kind of is a decent segue,
what?
because we always say don't talk to cops. And I recently had a personal experience.
Yes, you did, as you seem to do more than me.
Yeah, well, I have fun. I like to have fun.
We like to have fun at our law firm too.
I went back to Kansas pretty recently, where I'm from, Chautauqua County, and was shooting on the bridge west of Moline, Kansas. Well, I wasn't shooting at the time, but it's a bridge that we go and we shoot off of, you know, shoot sticks.
And how long have you been shooting off this bridge?
30 years. I'm 38. I think the first time I did it, I was 8 or 9. So 30, 29 years. And so we're sitting there, and we had just gotten there. And I walk up to the bridge, and I have an AR-15 with a suppressor on it. It's a legal suppressor that I own. I got a Form 4 through the ATF. It's a Dead Air Sandman S. Shout out. They're made in Utah, and they're top tier. And I had a 17 caliber, which is 17 HMR. It's more of a varmint rifle. It's a smaller caliber, but it's coming out pretty fast. And my buddy Adam was shooting that, and it had a suppressor on it. And so we're sitting there, and I'm getting ready to take a shot. And Adam says, hey, I think there's a cop coming. And naturally, I'm just going to sling my rifle. I take the sling and put it over my head and drop it, put it on safety, turn around. It's a game warden. No big deal. I'm not doing anything wrong. I wasn't worried about it at all. Game warden drives up, and the first thing that Adam does, he looks at the game warden. He says, these suppressors are legal. We got the paperwork. And I do have the paperwork, and they are legal. However,
That looks guilty when you say something like that, though.
what the game warden said, and this is a direct quote, well, since you brought it up, let me see them. Well, that day we had taken Adam's vehicle instead of the rental vehicle, which I had the foresight to print my forms out. They're obviously all in the safe next to the suppressors because you're supposed to keep them together. You can travel interstate with them. No big deal. It's not like an SBR where you have to let the ATF know that, hey, I'm going from Nevada to Kansas. I left my SBR here. I didn't take it with me. But the suppressors, you can just go wherever they're legally allowed to be. And in Kansas, they are allowed. So it's fine.
Short barrel rifle. Put that in the...
Yeah, SBR short barreled rifle. That's a Form 3. I have one, but I didn't take it with me. Anyway, so I had been trying to find the form for another suppressor that I was going to bring that I ended up not bringing. And because of that, I'd already pulled them all up in my email. Because I'm in BFE, right?
You're in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of nowhere. No cell phone signal. So I talked to the game warden, and I was like, hey, I'm going to try to pull these up. I showed him my subfolder in my Gmail that has an ATF subfolder. I showed him all of them. It says, request status change. Whenever you get a form in from the ATF, it'll send you an email saying, hey, it's changed, and then it attaches the PDF. And I'm like, I hope these load, because I believe I already loaded them, but if they didn't, we're going to have to go back to the other vehicle. And he's like, just start looking. Let me get that ID. And I give him my ID, and I pull the stuff up. He goes into his truck. He comes back. He looks at my forms. He's fine. They happen to load because I already loaded them. And then he goes and he sits in his truck. And I'm sitting on this bridge, and Adam's over there airing up the floaties because we were going to go float the river a little bit. And 10, 15 minutes goes by, and I'm like, I'm going to jail.
That's a long time.
I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail right now. And so I told Adam, I was like, hey, bro, just get out of here. Take the rifles, drive down to the bottom of the river. He doesn't want anything to do with you. He's going to arrest me. I don't want him to take my weapons. You can hold on to him for now. And then he gets out, and he's like, well, Justin, I know you said, or he's Mr. Wilson. Well, Mr. Wilson, I know you said you like to do things the right way, but, and I'm like, but? What do you mean, but? There ain't no but here. What are you talking about? Like, everything's legal, everything's fine. He's like, actually, you're not allowed to shoot off a bridge.
And we didn't.
I was like, well, it's great that I hadn't shot today. Turns out that shooting from a roadway in the state of Kansas is illegal. Even in Chautauqua County. And that's what I told him. I was like, well, I've literally been shooting off of this bridge, and the sheriff drove up to me. Not the current sheriff, but the prior sheriff. Hey, Justin, what are you doing? Oh, just plinking. What are you doing? Nothing? Hitting anything? Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
That prompts a question because some people think, hey, I've done this before and gotten in trouble, so they can't go after me now. That's not the case.
No.
In the least. So
that's not. And that's
a misunderstanding of the law is not a defense.
It isn't.
A mistake of fact, we talked about mistake just a minute ago with that mimic. If you mistake a fact, like
I didn't realize I was on a road. That's different. Like I'm walking through a field and it turns out the road goes through there, but I can't see because of the grass, and I shoot from that position. That's completely different. But here, I knew it was a road. I knew it was a bridge. It's just everybody does it. And when I told the story to a couple other people, including one of the police officers there, he goes, does that game warden not know that this is Chautauqua County? And I'm like, I guess not.
Things are a little different out there.
Yeah, things are a little different.
Middle of nowhere, Midwest.
And this whole interaction brings up an important thing to talk about with respect to firearms, right? Because obviously when you have law enforcement and civilian population, and I really don't like saying civilian, because it makes it in my head when law enforcement is speaking on their body cams and like, these are civilians, it's like they're making themselves be some kind of military unit or something like that. And that's not the case. Yes, they're law enforcement, but they're still civilians, right?
Yeah.
The military is non-civilian. Anyway, so law enforcement and non-law enforcement, when you have a firearm, what should you do? That's a great question. It completely depends. Like in my situation, this is a long gun. So it's a 16-inch barrel with a retractable stock, a telescopic stock, meaning you can squeeze it and shorten it or lengthen it depending upon your shooter for comfort. And it has a 8-inch suppressor on it. So you're not hiding it, right? So what I did is I flipped it to safety and I slung it to where it was on my back, right? Pointing at the ground. If I wanted to get it, I would have to do a lot of movements, right? You'd see me reach for it. You'd see me drag it up. There'd be plenty of time. The big thing is, in my mind, and this is all practical information. This is not legal information. I'll get to that stuff in a second. But the big thing is just don't do any movements or actions which would cause anyone to think that you are doing something dangerous, right? If I have a weapon and a police officer comes up to me, the first thing I do is either put it in its holster or put it down in some way. Flip it to safety. If they're far enough away from me, if I'd seen this police officer, let's say a half a mile down the road or a quarter mile down the road, I would have ejected the magazine and dropped the round out and made the weapon completely empty. I didn't have time to do that. So what I did is I flipped it to safety and just dropped it, slung it down. But if I had time, I would have completely made the weapon stage 1 with the chamber open so you could see into it. Magazine's over here, chamber's wide open. There's no way it's dangerous at that point.
Do you think it's good advice to maybe ask the police officer,
what do you want me to do?
What do you want me to do?
I've done that. Absolutely. There are times I've been pulled over because I have kind of a lead foot. I want to say I was on my way back from Oklahoma.
No admission of guilt there, but
whatever. That can mean a lot of things.
No.
Shut up. You're right. So I was on my way back, and the police officer pulled me over. And at the time, I didn't bother to look to know what New Mexico was. New Mexico is not a duty to inform state.
Oh, okay.
So I told the police officer. The first thing I did was I had my concealed carry permit, my driver's license out. I was like, yo, I got a weapon in the car. What do you want me to do with it? That's always a fair question because as long as they're comfortable, things are going to go a lot smoother.
Maybe you should back up and tell us about duty to inform, what that means.
So certain states, there are 12 of them, according to the United States Concealed Carry Association, and I believe that they update their stuff regularly, but obviously check your own state. And I'm not going to go through that with every state. But some states are what is called a duty to inform, and that means whenever a police officer walks up to you, if you have a firearm, either concealed or not, you have to tell them under law. You have to inform them, hey, the person that you're speaking with has a concealed weapon. And then there's other states where you only have to do it when you're asked. And then there's one where there's no duty to inform.
Which one's that?
Nevada, New Mexico, Kansas.
Oh, I thought you said there was just one.
No. There's
one type.
One type. Sorry,
There's
that's
type.
what I'm doing,
Gotcha.
the different types. There are 12 that are a duty to inform. And then it looks like there are a lot more where it's when asked.
So Nevada, I don't have to tell the police officer if I have a weapon on me.
Nope. Sometimes it's a good idea. Just because you don't have to do it doesn't mean that it's not practical to do it, especially in a situation where they might find out halfway through the interaction, right? Let's say I'm hip carrying a firearm, which is lame. And I'm turned in a way where the firearm is pointed away from a police officer and he walks up to talk to me about something. And I might have to turn around and he's going to see that I have a gun on me. I might say, by the way, I'm constitutional carrying right now, just for your own benefit. 99 times out of 100, what he's going to say is, cool, don't reach for yours and I won't reach for mine. That's a great compromise. Let's do
Sometimes,
that.
like when you were driving out to Laughlin or wherever you were, they might get mad about you having a gun.
And I told him, and I didn't have to. And I won't be telling him anymore.
Nevada, you don't have to.
You don't have to. Check your own state.
But if you do have, I've been told that if you have a CCW here in Nevada, as soon as they run your plates, they know
it's attached.
That you're a CCW holder. So they might be prompted to ask right then and there. So, and can you lie to them?
You shouldn't. You shouldn't do that. You should definitely just tell them.
You definitely shouldn't.
One that blew my mind was that Nebraska and Texas are duty to inform.
Those are weird ones.
Yeah.
And you never know what you're going to draw with a cop either, because one might say why aren't you carrying? You have a CCW. You should be protecting yourself. Or there might be a cop that says, put that somewhere, put that over
You don't
there.
need it. Yeah.
Let me hold on to it.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get with a police officer.
You don't. And oftentimes I've found that you definitely get out what you put in, right?
Most of the time.
Most of the time, not always, right?
No, not always.
Not always. But yeah, with that situation on the bridge, obviously I couldn't do anything to not let him know that I had it. And Kansas is not a duty to inform. So
well, yeah, he saw it.
He saw it.
You're not hiding the
so
AR.
what I did at that point was specifically just try to mitigate any concern anyone would have walking up to me to make it seem like I didn't pose a threat, because I didn't. I wasn't intending on shooting anybody that
And
day.
this time you weren't charged. He left,
No,
right?
he left. He gets out. He tells me, by the way, it's illegal to shoot from a road, which is the interesting thing. Once I looked it up, you can shoot from the ditch. So I could be a foot off the road and
you're
shoot,
good.
but if you're on the road, you can't. Here in Nevada, it's 1,000 feet.
Okay, 1,000 feet.
And obviously there's other restrictions. There are certain places in Clark County that are just no shooting zones.
Yeah.
There's a map that they have online, which it's slightly confusing, but it's color coordinated, and like the dark red is a no shooting zone.
City limits.
It's city limits, but it extends as well. I think like up Lake Mead Road, like when you go towards the View and Frenchman Mountain, up in
Yeah.
that region, and then you get into the Lake Mead recreation area, which is its own federal thing. But just be careful. It'd be a dumb charge to get, and I understand that it's easy to mistake. So just do your due diligence. There are plenty of places to shoot that are not a problem.
And we've seen people ask me what kind of cases we see. And one of the ones we see a lot is possession of gun charges. Like a felon in possession is one, or attempt to have a concealed weapon without a license.
Yeah, carry a
do so.
concealed weapon without a license.
We see those more than we should.
That felon in possession is going to get turned on its head, though.
Yeah, I know what you're saying with that one, but we just see those a lot. So
Yeah.
be careful. Know your laws when you
Yep.
have a firearm on you. You're allowed to have a firearm unless you're a felon or your rights have been stripped. Although there's been some change in law there that we'll have to get into
we'll have
later.
to talk about that another time. There's
Super interesting. Some definitely a U.S. Supreme Court that is more pro gun rights right now. So there's been some things that have changed in the recent law there. So
yes.
we'll get into that more. But is there anything else you want to say about the game warden situation you have?
Game wardens have a lot of power. So I don't get nervous around law enforcement very often. It would take a special situation to make me rattled. But anytime a game warden is potentially going to hem me up, which has only happened a couple of times in my life, and it's always been something like this because I've never poached or anything stupid like that. I get nervous because their civil asset forfeiture is
Ooh, those guns might be bye-bye
and the truck.
that you paid thousands of dollars for.
And if the truck had a boat hooked to it, the boat too. They can take everything. They actually have more civil asset forfeiture than certain federal organizations, which is insane. I mean, yeah, don't poach.
I know.
But also, civil asset forfeiture is the devil.
All right, a couple episodes ago, you talked. We mentioned legal phrases kind of quickly sometimes, and we know not everybody knows what they are. We have some lawyers that listen to us too. But you quickly mentioned Terry stops, and I don't think we had time to go into that. I think it's super interesting. Everything that has a name, Terry stops, is because there was a criminal defendant named Terry. And his case, for whatever reason, had the set of facts that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So whenever we talk about their decision, we call them Terry stops. It's like
Terry v. Ohio.
getting Mirandized. That's because there was a guy named with the last name Miranda.
Miranda v. Arizona.
And that's how they have the case, is last name versus state, because he was the appellant. He appealed the case up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So thanks to this man named Miranda, now everybody talks about getting Mirandized, and because of a guy named Terry, I think it was in New York, right?
Terry was in New York.
There's Terry stops. So what's a Terry stop, Justin?
So in Terry, this guy was casing a business. It looked like he was casing a business to burglarize it or rob it. And this police officer saw this from ways away, and he wants to go do a brief investigation and he has a reasonable suspicion that this guy's casing the joint. He's behaving oddly. He's doing a bunch of weird stuff. He keeps like, if memory serves, so I don't remember all the details, but I remember a lot of them considering I read it 8 years ago. The guy kept going around into the alley from the front of the business, doing a bunch of weird stuff. And so the cop goes over to talk to him.
Did he have a backpack too? Was there a backpack
I think
element?
he had a backpack and a big coat. And the cop goes over to talk to him. And when he goes to talk to him, he pats him down and feels a gun. So the standard is if it's a brief, temporary, involuntary detention of a person suspected of being involved in criminal activity at the time for the purpose of investigating the potential criminal violation.
Wow, you said a lot of words.
I did.
Reasonable suspicion. I thought you had to have probable cause.
There's different standards. Probable cause is to arrest. Reasonable suspicion is to communicate. In this instance, right? So if
To temporarily detain.
you, I have a reasonable suspicion that this guy's going to rob this building, rob this building. So I'm going to go talk to him, see what he's doing. You know?
Well, we throw out those words like probable cause, reasonable suspicion, which unless you analyze them, maybe you don't understand. Hey, one is higher.
Yeah.
Probable is like we think more likely than not. Probably
51%.
You know,
to
this,
put it into
this
a
guy's going to do
number.
something. Reasonable suspicion is definitely less than 50%.
Sure.
It's like, you know, I'm not sure,
But it's not just a hunch.
I got to suspect. Yeah, not just a hunch.
It's more than that.
And that's legally not just a hunch.
Correct,
It
yeah.
has to be. So maybe 25%. They don't put these in numbers either. And every time it's, hey, every single fact matters of what, you know, this police officer sees. And he's allowed to sit and watch, you know. He can watch you if you're in a public space.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and the thing here is there's also limitations. It has to be very brief, and it can only be for weapons, and it's the outer clothing, and it's specifically for officer safety.
so if he were to feel drugs on that person,
So that you're getting into a different thing, which actually works. It's called the plain feel exception. Because we've always talked about the plain view exception. I think we mentioned it a couple times. If a police officer's where they're legally allowed to be and they look. So, for example, Austin with his fancy podcast studio, he's in here cutting up his bricks of cocaine, and a police officer walks in to do his podcast, and Austin forgot to get rid of one of the, you know, VCR-shaped bricks that has a scorpion stamp on the top of it. Cop sees it.
ooh, you're a scorpion guy, huh?
Hell yeah. That's how my boy does things. Zacatecas, right?
His last name's Alvarez, right?
Hell yeah. Anyway, cop sees it, immediately recognizes it as a bird, a brick, as a key, whatever you want to call it. And he arrests Austin. Same thing applies if I go to pat you down, and let's say we're in a state where marijuana is illegal, and I feel a bong in your pocket. That immediately feels to me like paraphernalia, which is a misdemeanor in most states. So I could pull it out. Let's say it's not really a bong. Okay, cool. Doesn't matter. Plain feel exception. I was able to do it. You get into a weird situation, and I've had this happen a couple of times where a cop knows the guy's involved in drugs, goes to pat him down, and feels a rock in his pocket. It just so happened to be a rock of methamphetamine that weighed about 43 grams.
I thought it was a pet rock.
Nope. This one was not a cha-cha-cha-chia. I don't know why they always make me do that in my brain. The voices won't stop. No, so it gets weird whenever the cop has to really, really do well at articulating what he's feeling, but the plain feel exception can apply there. A pipe, for example, is pretty easy to tell. A knife, a syringe, you could probably tell what that was straight out of a pocket.
Yes.
And at that point, you're going to be able to investigate it. It could be just diabetic supplies. That's fine. You're not going to get charged, but you're going to have some splaining to do.
Lucy.
Not cool. That one was definitely domestic violence. In the 50s, that was acceptable.
Women could hit men, right?
I think Ricky was hitting Lucy.
Did he? I
mean,
before
he
my
didn't
time,
hit
I
her in
thought
the
she
show,
did
did
some
he, though?
stuff too, right?
No, but he was always Lucy.
Oh yeah.
Why
he was
I oughta.
threatening. He was threatening.
And he was like, he was like the stereotypical Puerto Rican kind of like singer in a nightclub with
Was
the
he?
flashy accent. No, that was his thing. He was a singer in a nightclub. Absolutely.
I've seen a few.
We used to
Sorry.
have Boomerang. And so we'd watch all the old stuff like I Dream of Jeannie and the cartoons, Hong Kong Phooey. So good.
What's the okay? I Dream of Jeannie had the magic carpet that she wrote.
Yeah, and then she would do the like with her little nose
and
thing.
then she had the hair
Yeah, she'd wiggle her nose and magic would happen.
as it does.
Sometimes.
I wanted to talk about, obviously, Terry stops. You have, we have rights. We just can't.
And everyone knows them, especially if they have a camera and they're screaming. The louder you yell, the more you know your rights.
Yeah, exactly. The cops are not allowed to just stop you.
Nope. Like if I'm
Just
walking down
for
the
no
street
reason.
and I'm not doing anything, and the cop walks up to me and says, "Hey, I need to frisk you."
What if you have an open carry gun on your hip?
Politely, fuck off.
Wow. Big one.
I'll say it that time. I don't care. That irks the. You want to talk about getting me fired up? If I've got
Hey, officer, no thanks.
if I'm that's the way you need to do it. Do not tell him that. No, I'm sorry, I'm not consenting. Am I being detained? No, thanks. See you later. Have a good day.
What's your reasonable People often think they have to assert, hey,
No, you don't have to assert it.
you have to tell me this reasonable suspicion
But
now.
if you ask, it really puts them on the spot.
It does.
There are many videos
They're
I've
not
seen.
legally required to tell you at that moment.
They're
right?
not. But there are many videos I've seen where someone's like, "Okay, you're pulling me out of the car. What's your probable cause? What crime do you believe I've committed?" And they can't articulate anything, and then it's ultimately going to get thrown out. You are going to have to fight it still. But if you put them on the spot there and they can't articulate it in the moment, especially if it's on camera, body cam, or if you're one of those people like I was talking about that obviously knows your rights because you scream really loud and record everything. Dude, sometimes you don't have to rock the boat.
You don't at that moment because you reserve all rights to argue this later.
Yep.
Like an attorney can come in and argue this. You don't have to argue with the cop.
Correct. And in fact,
to keep your rights.
it's usually not going to help because here's the long and short of it.
You're going to maybe admit to something by trying to do that too.
Someone very close to me when I was a child was getting arrested in front of me, and I was mad because my room was getting searched, a bunch of other stuff. This dude, I love him more than anybody in the world, right? He's the only reason I am what I am today. And the thing that he said to me when I was pissed, I was so mad. I was like, "Why are they going through my toys? Why are they looking through my stuff? Why aren't you fighting them? Why aren't you stopping them?" And he's like, "Look, I could do that right now, and things are going to get much worse. Or we can deal with it tomorrow, and we'll all be okay." And that's the truth. It was the best advice I ever got from an adult in my life. And it was like, I think I was 5. I was in kindergarten the first time that happened. And it's like these people, and you see them and you're like, all right, they said shut up. If you just shut up right there, you wouldn't have got arrested. You wouldn't have got to the point that you need an attorney, whether it be a public defender or somebody you have to pay thousands of dollars for, right? And then you have to fight and you have to get yourself out of jail. You're on monitoring, all this other crap. Sometimes you can be wrong and be right because you were right and the cop was wrong in the moment, but I said that backwards. The cop can be wrong and you can be right because he's wrong to try to arrest you or to try to bother you, but you're right to shut up so that you don't end up with more problems. We're going to need to edit that. That sounded really dumb.
And if
you get the point that I'm making.
Yeah, if you're trying to, fight the cop in that moment and say, you don't have, authority to arrest me, and you're running away.
He's got handcuffs and a badge.
That is a resisting, you can get a resisting even though you didn't do anything underlying. So
you can, but it won't stand.
It'll be, yes.
Yeah. But you'll get arrested.
But you'll get a more charge and they'll have more to hang over your head.
And let's look at it from just a practical standpoint. Let's say that I get arrested and they're completely wrong and the DA denies, which happens here a lot. You still had to go to lower level arraignment. You still sat in jail for a few days and you still had to squat and cough in front of somebody. Right? That stuff sucks.
The food's not great in there either.
And CCDC intake, they deal with a lot of stuff. They have a very stressful job. No shade on them, but it's an unpleasant place to be.
And hopefully you walk out with all the stuff you came in with.
Yep.
Hopefully.
But we could avoid this by sometimes, it's just like not getting in fights. I've seen tons of times where dudes are getting into it, and if that second guy would have just humbled himself just a little bit and just shut up.
I think we're okay with people asking, okay, what are you arresting me for?
Sure. I'm not saying don't talk. I'm not saying don't stand up for yourself, but
what did you stop me for, officer?
Those are good.
Why am I being patted down, officer?
Sure. Am I being detained? If no, bye.
So there's decent questions, but
you also have to understand that you need to have the self-control that once you get the 2 or 3 questions out, you need to protect yourself. And then they're going to continue asking you questions. You got to shut up at that point.
Do you know why I stopped you?
I'm not answering questions. I don't answer questions about my day.
Dang it. I almost had him.
Dang it. He almost told me he was speeding.
You guys know why I stopped you, right?
I don't answer questions about my day. And you need to do it respectfully.
Okay,
You know?
here's your speeding ticket.
That's fine.
You don't mind if I look in the car, right?
I absolutely mind. You're not looking at my car.
You're not hiding anything, are you?
I'm not answering questions about my day.
Have you had anything to drink? You smell like alcohol.
I'm not answering questions about my day. Sure. Sure.
Oh, I got PC now, baby.
Uh-oh.
Get out of your car.
Slurred
Get out of your
speech.
car.
Bloodshot eyes.
Got a live one. Got a live one.
Tase him.
Okay, so Terry stops. Boop, boop, boop. I wanted to talk about, I went to the country of Honduras in November.
I
My
believe
first
it's
time.
pronounced Honduras.
Honduras, Catracholandia. Yeah, it's a fun
Calm down, Austin.
Central American country, very much poverty stricken. Yeah, it is one of the most poverty stricken of Central America.
Really?
Yeah, most people living in poverty out of Central America. A lot of El Salvador had, a ton of gangs and stuff. So a lot of Salvadorans have been allowed to move to the U.S.
Is Honduras north or south of Salvador?
It's kind of north. So,
But it's off center, right? It's
yeah,
to the right. Okay,
it's kind of northeast of it.
Got it.
It's much bigger. But we had a guide there when we were there, and he said, you're going to always need your passport on you. Always. You need to have
Give me
it.
a deine Papieren.
You need to have it everywhere. We went kind of into the sticks, into the
Give me your
boonies,
papers.
and there's no, country police there, but just driving on the freeway, there are just random stops, and they can pull over the entire vehicle and say, show me your papers.
Not just half of it?
What do you mean?
I'm being a dick.
I didn't understand.
You said pull over the entire vehicle.
Oh, everyone in the vehicle. Oh.
Got it. I got it.
Oh, you're so funny. You're so cool. So,
Dude, it's Friday. Give me a break. We don't
We
normally
had-
do this today. I don't care as much right now.
we had one local Honduran guy, a little tanner than the 4 white guys that were with him. He had tanner skin. So we get pulled over, and, they had to ask for papers from all of us.
Sure.
They look at all of our, make sure we have our pasaporte.
Pasaporte.
Exactly. And so they didn't have to have any reason any reasonable suspicion.
So
They could just bring you over and see, hey, we want to make sure you're not committing any crimes.
Well, the interesting thing is that we have a similar situation. If you're within 100 miles of the border, the restrictions on police to conduct investigations specifically for border enforcement are reduced dramatically. They can have checkpoints. They can do things that they are not allowed to do anywhere else. And I don't operate there, but I remember from criminal law and from dealing with the INA a little bit whenever I took immigration in law school, that there are specific differences within that 100-mile border or the 100 miles of the border. And then you'll see videos of somebody down in Arizona. They get stopped. Hey, are you a citizen? Can we look in your trunk? I don't remember all the particulars because I don't have to function with it a lot, but I do know that we have similar stuff.
Yeah, and
What-
that gets into
limited,
the
though.
that gets into the weeds too. There's some very interesting stuff we could get into about non-citizens enjoying the rights of the Constitution where they are. I was just trying to paint a picture of, hey, other countries don't enjoy the rights and certainly don't have the long-standing Supreme Court decisions that clarify, because that's what ends up happening. The Constitution is super short, incredibly short, and so it can't contemplate every single criminal dispute. So then it goes to the Supreme Court, and they make these clarifications. Hey, you have to read Miranda rights. Hey, the police are allowed to stop somebody pursuant to a Terry stop. So
To check for weapons for officer safety.
yes. So other countries, not quite like that. And
Nope.
4 white guys with a Hispanic.
I mean,
Guy.
four white dudes in Honduras. Who knows? You guys could have been up to no good.
It was incredible. On the plane out, there were so many, people wearing T-shirts that were obviously going there to, give back or give something to the community. So It was incredibly interesting.
Oh, you're talking when you're flying from here to there.
When I'm flying, to Honduras on the plane from Miami.
Isn't that what you guys did? It was some kind of mission thing?
Yeah, it was, we're giving back. We'll plug, our last listener question was from the founder of Markovia Project, Markovia, Honduras. Donate to help kids go to school who are impoverished, and sometimes the parents have to pull them out of school to get to work when they're 11, 12 years old. So just trying to help people and kids get to school and get an education and hopefully get somewhere better, because it's
to lift all of their society up.
It's a tough, it's a tough outlook in that country.
Sure. And that's the long and short of it. And I know I gripe about the government a lot. I do have a lot of things to complain about because
they involve themselves so much in our lives.
I don't believe that my rights come from the government.
No.
And I think a lot of people in the government believe that their job is to give rights, but that's not what it is. We all get our rights, whether it's through your creator or just by being an animal on the planet, right? I have the right to do certain things
travel
because I'm here. But that being said, a lot of places have it way worse. Not from a poverty perspective necessarily, but the Constitution, for example, in Australia, they don't have as many enshrined rights in their Constitution as we do. Like purely written down, the basic numbers. They don't have it.
Yeah.
They have some of the same rights we do practically, but when it gets down to the short and curlies, we're the only ones that have it written down.
We have very positive powers,
Sure,
in there that sometimes get limited or altered by the Supreme Court.
It's imperfect, but it's
better
than we could be anywhere else.
Yeah.
And America,
4th of July, baby.
That's what I appreciate about you.
Our listener question was from myself or from Austin.
I was like, what?
Thank you, listeners.
You're not a listener.
Well, we've had a few things pop off here in Las Vegas. One right around the corner from our office where there was a building, a hut, kind of an old abandoned shack where allegedly there was a man sexually assaulting a woman in this shack, and there were people around. And they heard it, so they came and they intervened, and all of a sudden this guy ends up dead. Dead as a doornail.
Okay.
Also in Florida, there was a recent one where a man was kissing a young girl, and he ended up getting beat up by a crowd.
Okay.
So the question that I pose is, when can I, as an independent witness, intervene in a crime to stop a crime? And I know you had great interest in this because I don't think anybody's facing charges in either of these two, and people might think it's justified, these instances to beat up somebody, kissing an underage girl or somebody sexually assaulting a woman. He gets what's coming to him.
Sure.
But legally, we have a society view, but the legal view. When can I intervene when I see a crime? How can I intervene?
So you can intervene in ways that are proportional, but the first thing that I thought of when you were talking about an essay, the one here where someone dies, I am 99.9% certain that at common law, just like with other murders, right, homicide, if I believe I'm at risk of death or grievous bodily harm, I can use lethal force. But also, I can use lethal force on your behalf if you're at risk of grievous bodily harm or death. I am 99.9% certain that you can do the same thing for SA. Like if I walk around a corner and I see somebody Brock Turnering it, I can double tap him in the back of the head. At common law.
To end the sex assault.
To end the assault, right? It's not a matter of like it's not retribution. I'm defending them. And
to stop the furtherance of the assault. Okay.
And so I'm looking here, and it looks like there are many instances where that happens, where somebody uses lethal force.
The point that's interesting in the Las Vegas one, that's just around the corner from where we're at, is the group that was there that stabbed this guy to death, they were gone by the time the police got there. They were gone. So I don't know if there's something more there going on, something weird, but nobody's going to be charged with that. And then the DA has the sole discretion of whether they want to pursue charges on that as well, or if they think it's justified. Even if it is a crime, like absolutely they overstepped their bounds, guess what? The DA has the choice. Hey, I don't want to charge this. And there's nothing we can do about it. They have qualified immunity for that. So even if you think that's wrong, you cannot sue the DA for it. You could sue a person under a tort theory that we talked about before. If they hurt you and it wasn't warranted or wasn't excused, you can potentially get money from them. The decedents, this dead guy's family could potentially, if they were able to find somebody, they could only sue, the stabber or the group, but not the cops or the DAs.
So in addition to proportionality and some of this stuff, you have to have, it's always the reasonably prudent person standard, right? If somebody in that situation, the reasonable prudent person believed that lethal force was necessary to stop that at that moment.
We yelled at him to stop, and he didn't. So I had to stab him.
Had to shoot him in the face, whatever. That's the thing that you get into, though, and that's where it sucks about the police and then the prosecution, because somebody gets to armchair quarterback this after the fact when they're not sitting there in the heat of the moment. They're literally looking at words on a piece of paper or video or whatever, and they're like,
harder to judge then.
Way harder to judge than
You're
when
not in
face
that
down
mindset.
Yeah.
So,
but to prevent regular crimes, like if I walk up and it's all context, man. Like if I walk, like the talk about an adult kissing a kid, if I walked up and saw two, like let's say that they look like each other and he's kissing her on the cheek and she's not fighting him. What if it's just some dude kissing his daughter bye, But if she's struggling saying no, even if they look alike, I'm probably not going to wait. I'm probably going to go over and put my hands on that fool.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm just going to go like clobber him, but I'm definitely, there's actually some of these videos where these people do these little social experiments. They'll have a kid sit on a bench and this creepy guy will wait, and he's like a creep looking dude. He'll wait to come over and say, hey, your mom told me to come pick you up. She's at work. Let's go to the park.
In earshot of another person.
And there'll be somebody sitting there to see what they do.
Yeah.
I've never seen one where the person's just like, okay, whatever. Half the time the guy's like, look, fool, you either get out of here right now or you're losing some teeth.
They're always protective.
Yeah, which you should be. And in a situation like that, at least in my mind, practically, not legally speaking, I'm going to weigh the risks. If I look stupid and get made to have some social sort of ostracization for trying to do something that otherwise I could have prevented a child abduction, worth it. Am I going to go to prison for that same situation? Maybe not. You see what I'm saying? Like that risk analysis becomes different.
You'd hope the DA looks at that a little differently.
Yeah. Like you make an honest mistake with what reasonably looked like it was going to be something awful. You'd hope that they do the right thing, but they don't always, as we've seen.
Well, thanks for another week of Tangled Rights. We'll be back next week.
The rights.
Please put comments into things that you want to hear about.
I don't know. I've been just trying to come up with a hand symbol for it. Tangled.
And we will try to stop being weird. Thank you, guys.
It's never going to happen.
Never going to happen.
Have a good day. Happy weekend.